एक समोलोगिस्ते तो किरियो te agathos alleluia
Otis ton neona to eleos aftu alleluia.
Any Muslim here? You sir, please. Instead of hiding, please come here. Don't be hiding, please. So, why do you think the Quran is from a supernatural source?
What do you mean?
You know, you think the Quran is from a supernatural source,
Supernatural source?
God. You think
Yeah.
it's from God, yeah?
Yeah.
Why? Why do you think so?
Okay, first of all, it was revealed in Arabic, yeah? It was revealed in Arabic language.
Please, give me the story. Why do you think?
Why I say?
Why do you think the Quran is from God? Why?
Because it's from God. What such a stupid question.
But why? Why do you think so? You
So
can't
how-
just
okay.
repeat a claim
Why
and
do
think
you
you've
say-
proven it.
Why do you say it's not from God?
Well, because there's all sorts of junk in there.
For
All
example,
sorts of junk. It makes simple details of history, it gets simple details of history wrong. It has all sorts of contradictions in there. It has all sorts of scientific mistakes in there. All sorts of junk.
You mean about the bone of children? Like in ours, yeah, like it has scientific.
Listen to me carefully, my dear friend.
Yeah.
I'll ask you a simple question. So let me be clear right now. I've asked you for a positive case. Where are you from? Either Malaysia?
No,
Where are you from?
Uzbekistan.
Uzbekistan. Lovely to see you today. What's your name?
Ali.
Ali, lovely to see you. My name is Arul. I am a Christian.
Yeah,
I believe in the Bible. You know, okay, lovely. Ali, let me put it this way. I asked you for a reason as to why the Quran is from a supernatural source, i.e. God. You could not give any. You just repeated the claim, you could not give a reason. Yeah? Which is very important. When you don't have a reason, when you follow something, it's blind faith. By God's grace, by God's grace. When you don't have a reason, when you follow something, it's blind belief. It's not good. You know, for example, if I told you, look, can you see the gold bar there? And you look and say, well, there's no gold bar there. If you still think there is gold bar there, that's not good. You understand, yeah? When you don't have a reason, you can't believe in something. Important. Now, when you don't have a positive reason for why the Quran is from a supernatural source, I am going to give you plenty of negative reasons. Yeah? Simple question. According to the Quran, who is the first messenger of the Arabs?
Messenger of the Arabs, it's Muhammad.
Yeah. According to the Quran, if you go to one place, it indicates who would be construed by Muslims as Muhammad.
Yeah.
But do you believe that Muhammad is from Ishmael?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you believe that Ishmael was a messenger?
Like I believe he's son of Abraham. I'm
Sure. But was Ishmael a messenger?
I'm not sure about that.
The Quran calls Ishmael also a messenger. So here is the problem.
Which problem?
Muhammad's forefather, one of Muhammad's forefather, who is Ishmael, is a messenger according to the Quran. To the descendants of Ishmael, who are, according to the Quran, the Arabs, according to the Quran. According to the Quran, the Arabs are people from Ishmael. Yeah. So the very forefather of all the Arabs, namely Ishmael, according to the Quran, was a messenger himself. If he was the first messenger, could Muhammad be the first messenger?
It should be second.
He should be second. But the Quran says he is also first. Can you have two first? Well, one came a long time ago and another came very late.
Nah.
Clearly not. So that's a simple mistake that the Quran makes. You understand what I'm saying? I can give you precise references if you like. But my simple point is, just to repeat, Ishmael was a forefather according to the Quran, not according to me. I disagree with this entire history. But according to the Quran, Ishmael was a forefather of the Arabs. Ishmael was a messenger. Muhammad was a descendant of Ishmael. Muhammad also was a messenger to the same people group, and therefore, when Ishmael is a messenger, Muhammad can't be the first messenger. So, Quran clearly is lying.
Can you show me the verse?
Muslim.
No, please.
Why are you talking to a little kid?
No, speak to him. Speak to him.
Are you allowed, yeah?
Yeah.
How old are you?
Can you show me?
How old are you?
17.
Please
Why are
keep
you
him.
talking to a 17-year-old kid?
Okay. Can
He's
you
a bit
show
confused.
me
Don't
where
worry.
it says like
Are you won't
Muhammad-
listen to you?
So let's look at the details. This is what deluded mafia gang members would do. Yeah.
Mafia.
Well, this guy is a mafia gang member. Look at him carefully. He was banned for 6 months from Speaker's Corner. That he received a ban, a court ban from Speaker's Corner, because essentially he is a troublemaker at Speaker's Corner. Now let me show you. So I'm going to show you right now where, according to the Quran. So let's take two references. Yeah.
Which surah it is?
I am taking 1 second. Surah 36:6 and Surah 19:4. So Surah 36:6. Let's read that first. Surah 36:6. What does Surah 36:6 say? That you may warn a people. Surah Yasin.
Yes.
Yeah. Ayat 6.
Okay.
That you may warn a people whose forefathers were not warned. Yeah. So according to this Quran, the forefathers weren't warned. So it was only Muhammad who was warning. In your mind it is Muhammad, but whether that is right or not is a different story. It's a Muhammad who is the first messenger. Yeah? Clearly, if they weren't warned by anyone else before, if Muhammad was the first one, then he is the first warner to the Arabs. Yeah, according to Surah 36, Ayat 6. Now let me go to the other reference, Surah 19, Ayat 54. So Surah 19, Surah Al-Maryam, Ayah 54.
54?
Yeah,
Good. What is it?
54. And mentioned in the book Ishmael. Indeed, he was true to his promise, and he was a messenger and a prophet.
Where it say it was first?
Well, who came first, Ishmael or Muhammad?
But it say his messenger, it doesn't mean he's first.
Listen to me carefully.
Okay, good.
Who came first, Ishmael or Muhammad?
Ishmael.
Yeah.
So
Who
how
came?
it's contradict?
No. Who came first is the one who is first. If the Arabs had two messengers, one was Ishmael, another was Muhammad, who would be the first messenger?
Ishmael.
Yes, so Ishmael is the first.
Yeah.
Because if Ishmael is the messenger, according to Surah 19, Ayat 54, that is the case, Ishmael is the first messenger.
He mentioned not first, he mentioned like a prophet. Where did you get he was first?
Messenger and a
I
prophet.
understand it's messenger.
First
but it's
in
not-
terms of time.
Okay.
Yeah. If Ishmael was already sent to the Arabs,
Go
could
to
it be
Surah
true?
Yasin, good.
Yeah, so let Surah Yasin, please read again. What does it say?
They
You
not
may
mean-
warn a people whose forefathers were not warned. But Ishmael would have warned them, yeah? Ishmael would have warned them. So clearly, that's a contradiction.
No, it's not contradiction at all.
Okay, we'll come to you later, sir. One second. You can introduce your confusion later. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So clearly there is a contradiction. It's not. This is one simple logical contradiction that the Quran makes. There are multiple similar contradictions. For example, the Quran says in one place Adam was the first Muslim. In another place, Surah 5, Al-Ma'idah, it says Muhammad was the first Muslim. So it makes all sorts of. Either Adam came long time before Muhammad. If Adam was the first Muslim, Muhammad can't be the first Muslim. It's simply contradictory. Yeah.
All the prophets were Muslims.
You see, Adam was a Muslim, yeah?
Yeah, of course.
According to him, Adam was a Muslim. But the Quran says Muhammad was the first Muslim. You can't have Adam being a Muslim and Muhammad being the first Muslim. You simply can't. So this is the confusion the Quran has. All sorts of contradictions all over the place. Not in minor details like this, in all sorts of major details, including, what I've showed you already are major details. My point is this. Quran, there are plenty of evidence points to understand why the Quran could not be from a supernatural source. I'll give you a long list.
Once you know
Please, one
then
second.
you can talk.
One
You
second.
don't know what you're
Once I
talking
finish
about.
the conversation, you can introduce your nonsense, please.
Muslim, it doesn't mean that
Thank you very much.
religion,
So
man.
please listen.
Muslims is based on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Islam, Quran has contradictions.
Never.
And the Quran itself says if there are contradictions, this can't be from God.
Bible.
And the Quran has contradictions, multiple of them. If you want more details, I can give you more details when you please you can email me. We do live streams. We can do live streams. Operations. Please take
He doesn't understand what
Operation
Listen,
Stephen.
brother.
Operation Stephen YouTube
He doesn't know
channel.
Arabic.
Contradictions.
He doesn't know Arabic.
History.
doesn't know what he's talking
The
about.
Quran gets its history wrong. I'll ask you a simple question. What makes you think, based on the details we discussed earlier, what makes you think Muhammad actually came from Ishmael?
Because he's from Ishmael.
What's the evidence you have?
Because he came
Quran claims that,
He says
but
so.
what's the evidence you have?
The Prophet.
not
said-
just Quran said. If you go to the generation, you can find it.
Please, what resources can you use? Pre-Islam, who claimed this?
And when Jewish people say that,
No Jew would say this.
Jewish say that.
My dear friend, please listen, Ali. No Jew would say this because I'll tell you something very important. You know the identity called Arabs? Arabs is a distinct ethnic identity, yeah, based on language. Distinct ethnic identity called Arabs came the earliest. Do you know what the earliest reference to the identity Arabs? It comes from about 8th century or 7th century BC. Earliest recorded evidence. And when it records the
Do you
identity,
know Arabic? Do you know Arabic?
irrelevant.
Tell me.
Please
Tell
take.
me, tell me.
Don't be.
Answer me.
Take
Do
a
you know
loo
Arabic?
break. Come back.
Do
We'll
you
have
know
a
Arabic?
conversation with
Do you
you.
know Arabic?
Thank you very much.
Do you know Arabic? So you know what I'm
The
talking about.
Arabs,
You don't know what you're talking about.
identity. This is where I can give you archaeological resources
Don't
if
talk
you like.
about Surah. I don't
The
know about
earliest of the references for an ethnic identity comes from around
You
earliest
don't know
8th
Arabic.
century.
No history.
Here is the problem. By that time, the ethnic identity called Ishmaelites was already well established in the Bible. Ishmaelites is a well established ethnic identity. Later on, even in the Bible, you have a record for the existence of Arabs, distinguished from Ishmaelites. There is no historical resource pre-Islam that you could use to claim Ishmaelites were Arabs. No resource you could use. If you want to, you can think a little bit more if you can think of any resource. If you can't think right now, that's fine. If you can't come up with a resource right now, that's fine, Ali. But when you go home, research and see if there is any pre-Islamic claim to this fantasy. And my response to you would be, you won't find any. It's all concocted, all introduced as a fantasy lie during the time of Islam's origin in the 7th century. You see what I'm saying? Islam came up with lies about history. I'll give you a couple of other examples. Crucifixion
Crucifixion of Jesus Christ.
of Jesus. No, crucifixion as a mode of penalty. You know how you have today in the US, you have lethal injection, as death penalty mode. Likewise, crucifixion as a mode of penalty, based on all available history, is understood to be from the Romans. You hear what I'm saying? From the Romans. In and around the time of Jesus. You can take it back maybe 100 years, couple of 100 years. That's the period when crucifixion was introduced as a penalty. Crucifixion, by no stretch of imagination, was introduced as a penalty or practiced as a penalty in Egypt. It wasn't. But guess what? The Quran claims crucifixion was there in Egypt. In Surah Yusuf. In Surah Yusuf, it talks about crucifixion.
Which crucifixion? Jesus or which one?
No, crucifixion of, Yusuf.
Yeah, I know.
Yusuf was in prison. He had two fellow prisoners who were employees under the Pharaoh. And one of them was crucified, the Quran claims, which is a historical anachronism. What is called anachronism? Because the punishment didn't exist at that time. Neither did it exist at that time nor in Egypt. What was a later punishment in a different land, Islam predates it just because it doesn't know history. Likewise, it makes all sorts of historical mistakes. Just to quickly summarize, Islam makes mistakes of history, crucial mistakes in history, not minor little here or there, crucial mistakes of history. Islam makes crucial mistakes in science. Islam makes contradictory claims. Islam makes, Can we turn? Yeah, we'll wrap up, brother. Islam makes contradictory claims. There are all sorts of contradictions in the Quran. Islam makes logically fallacious arguments. All sorts of logically fallacious arguments. In other words, the Quran we have plenty of reasons to reject the Quran from from a supernatural source. Hear what I'm saying? This can't be from a supernatural source. For a logically fallacious argument, I'll make one simple statement. Yeah? You understand literary genius, yeah? You know of Shakespeare, for instance. Marvelous literature, you know. Shakespeare is read across the world, by different parts of the world, yeah? In English, you know, so Shakespeare is read. Marvelously successful, literary genius. Tell me, is there a way to measure whether Shakespeare was better or William Wordsworth was better? Is there an objective measurement standard? You know, for example, in terms of height, there is an objective measurement standard. You can have a measuring rod here or measuring some sort of a tape, and you can say, I don't know who is taller, you or me, I don't know, but you know, based on measurement, you can say, well, he is taller or I am taller, yeah? Because it's an objective measurement.
Yeah.
But is there an objective measurement when two people write marvelously, both successful, both having their audience? Could you say one's writings was better than the other in an objective way? In a subjective way, people can argue, but in an objective way, like how you can compare height. Can you compare?
No.
You clearly can't. But what does the Quran think? Quran thinks you can. For example, one of the reasons why the Quran thinks Quran is from Islamic Allah or from a supernatural source is because it says, look, this is wonderful literature. That's one of the reasons given. This is wonderful literature. Let's grant it is a wonderful literature. And I said, well, there is no way to measure what is the Quran better as a literature or Shakespeare better, Shakespeare's work better. Who knows? You can argue until cows come home. Yeah. So you can't even compare. But for a moment, let's say you can compare. For a moment, and let's say the Quran is the best. Does it still mean it is from God? Hey, how are you doing? Does it still mean it is from God? Just because it's wonderful literature?
Kind of, yeah.
How can it mean? Can you then say Shakespeare is from God?
Can you create some kind of verse like a Quran?
Yeah, Shakespeare's work in my mind is much better.
In English, but can you do it in Arabic?
Why Arabic?
Because it should be
Well, you can limit. If I said
not only in one language, you should do it in
according to the
language.
Quran.
Yeah.
According to the Quran, there were compatriots during the writing the Quran who essentially said, look, we can. The Quran itself, I don't remember the reference off the top of my head right now, but I can give it to you later. In the video, I'll give the reference. But according to the Quran, the contemporaries, while the Quran was being written, while the conversations were happening, there were people who claimed that they could produce a literature similar. Who was to argue? They could in Arabic. This is why Quran in many places, are you familiar with this idea that Quran in many places references to the idea that whoever contributed to the Quran wasn't a poet? You know this, yeah? He wasn't a poet, he was a messenger. It goes on to repeat that. He wasn't a poet, a writer, but rather he was a warner, a messenger. It does that because it wanted to compare and contrast with the literary geniuses of Arabic of that time. And it wanted to run away from competition by saying, look, I am a religious literature, but then went on to say, look, I am the best literature when they weren't around. And when they got to know the claim, they said, look, we can produce. And Quran went away. It's not an objective challenge. It's a logically fallacious argument to make. I can stand here and say, look, I am the most smart looking man in this at the park right now, and therefore I am God. I can say some silly nonsense like that. Just because I say some nonsense, you won't believe, you won't take me seriously. And so you should not take the Quran seriously also. The Quran is not from God. It has utter junk.
What about the Bible?
The Bible, on the other hand, is marvelous. I'll talk about this briefly. The New Testament. You know, the crux of the New Testament, the very anchor point, the very reference point, Ali, of the New Testament is death, burial, resurrection of this person called Jesus. Now let's talk about the deity of Jesus later. I'm not talking about that right now. But let me say this one thing. If a man were to die, and if he were to be buried, and if he were to come back alive on the third day, do we understand that is an objective evidence for the fact that there is God. Do we understand?
No.
When someone dies,
God can alive it again. If any prophets can die and after that can become
absolutely.
alive.
In other words, when someone dies and comes back alive in some way, shape or form, God is involved. Yeah?
Yeah, because
Sure. Without God, you can't do it. In some way, shape or form.
Yeah.
What did I say earlier? For the Quran, there is no supernatural witnessing. There is none whatsoever. And that's why I asked you, why do you think the Quran is from a supernatural source? You could not provide any positive evidence. There is none, as a matter of fact. All the negative evidence, there are plenty of negative evidence, like I said earlier. So the Quran doesn't stand a chance. In contrast, the Bible stands a chance. Jesus died, came back alive, which means in and through Jesus, something was special. And so you can listen to Jesus and say, look, Jesus, you are special. Help me, tell me. And Jesus can explain. So whatever Jesus authorizes, whatever Jesus gives as his material, as his writings, should be taken seriously. Do you understand? And that is what New Testament is. Because the New Testament was given to us by who are called the apostolic community. Jesus essentially said, look, these are my official ambassadors. You know Uzbekistan, you are from Uzbekistan.
Yeah.
You know there'll be an embassy for Uzbekistan somewhere here, yeah? In London somewhere maybe. And if you go there, you'll have Uzbekistan officials there. They could give you passport. For example, if your passport is expired, they could give you a passport. If, for example, you don't have your passport but you need to travel to Uzbekistan urgently, they can give you a travel document of some sort. Maybe some letter saying, Ali is a bona fide citizen of Uzbekistan. You know, he can come and visit Uzbekistan with this paper. They can give you. Why? Because they have the authority. Likewise, Jesus had given authority to his apostles. What his apostolic community wrote is what is called the New Testament. Jesus died and came back alive. Through his death, burial, resurrection, Jesus himself testifies in a supernatural manner through the writings of people who were officially sent by him, the apostles. And that is why I trust the New Testament. And likewise, I can give a case for the Old Testament if you like. But in other words, my point is the Bible is trustworthy. In the Bible, you will not have logical fallacies. In the Bible, you will not have contradictions. You won't. In the Bible, you won't have scientific mistakes, historical mistakes.
You said in the Bible there is no contradiction. Right?
There isn't any.
It has contradiction.
It doesn't have.
It has.
No, it doesn't have.
It has.
So that is where what I'm going to,
No.
Ali,
Listen.
what I'm going to say to you, Ali.
How many women was in the when they walked to the sea to the Jesus, like in the temple? How many?
In the
women-
way?
Yeah. For example, when Jesus died on the Friday, yeah, according to you,
Yeah.
and after that, like on the Sunday, today he should become alive. When Mary Magdalene went there was not one. In other gospel says there were two women.
Where? So explain. Show me the details and explain.
I can't-
So
but
can I recommend something? Please take this on YouTube. This is an email. Please email me. I'll give you more details. On YouTube, Thursdays, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. we do live streams on YouTube. You can jump online, you know. But I'll tell you how to. If you're not familiar with this, ask. I'll answer. Yeah, I have studied the Bible in detail. The Bible does not have contradictions. But I hear you don't know the details right now, but you can bring details on that day. Do a little bit of research, half an hour, put together the references and join the stream. Yep. Lovely. Ali, lovely speaking to you today. But don't listen to your Islamic Ummah if they discourage you from joining. Join. The Quran has flaws, the Bible doesn't have flaws. You need to become a Christian. God's blessings to you. Thank you.